Greetings from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. A very good evening to all. My name is Queen, and I am the Regional Learning and Development Business Partner for Southeast Asia and Australasia. The purpose of this session today is to provide you with an overview of the 2015 syllabus and assessment. Thank you for joining me. This is how the session will flow over the next hour or so. We will be looking at a few topics. We will start off with a very brief introduction as well as an overview of the 2015 syllabus structure. This will then be followed with the 2015 assessments in terms of the objective tests as well as the case studies. I will then run you through the transition from the 2010 syllabus to the 2015 syllabus. And finally, I will do a very quick demonstration of the practice test platform just to show you the feel of how the 2015 assessments will look like. Recently, in the past few years, research has shown that there has been an employability gap globally. So to ensure that our students are always highly employable, what CIMA has done was to carry out an extensive global research. And the outcome from this research was actually used to develop our competency framework. What the competency framework does is that it defines the skills and abilities that employers are actually looking for. This framework demonstrates that the role of finance today is changing, and therefore, apart from having just solid technical skills, finance professionals will also need to understand their business model as well as to have skills to influence people and to lead people within the organization. And underpinning all of these components, of course, will be ethics, integrity, and professionalism. The 2015 syllabus, therefore, is shaped by the underpinnings of this competency framework and maps these competencies, which are your technical skills, business skills, people skills, and leadership skills, into the syllabus content. So this is how the 2015 CIMA Professional Qualification Syllabus look like. There will be a new assessment strategy in 2015. We will be moving towards computer-based assessment to support this revised syllabus, at the same time addressing the changing needs of students as well as employers. Now, I will talk about this computerized assessment shortly. Let's have a look at the diagram first. There are a few things that we retain from the existing 2010 syllabus structure. The first thing is that you still see the three pillars in our syllabus, and that is your enterprise pillar, your performance pillar, and the financial pillar. We still maintain the three levels of achievement in our syllabus structure, namely the operational level, the management level, and the strategic level. The changes come in when we have some contents moving between pillars and between levels. Some contents are removed or reduced. Now, all this is done to better reflect the relevance of the syllabus content in today's environment. Also, in the 2015 syllabus, new topics have been created. Now, these new topics are created to address new and evolving business issues in our environment today. The other change that you can actually see from the diagram here is that at every level, at the end of every level here, we now have an integrated case study. So we have an operational level case study, management level case study, and a strategic level case study. All the 9 subjects, E1, P1, F1, E2, P2, F2, E3, P3, and F3, all 9, will be assessed by an objective test. This will be a 90-minute test. Students will be tested on all component learning outcomes. 100% of the component learning outcomes will be tested. Therefore, with objective testing, we say that there is rigor and it is comprehensive. Now, what sort of questions should you expect to see in an objective test? We have a variety of question types. Of course, the most obvious that comes with an objective test is your multiple choice, whereby you will choose the best answer from 4 or 5 options that are given. So that's your multiple choice, the A, B, C, D, that we are very familiar with. The other type of question that you will get in your objective testing is what we call your multiple answers. Multiple answers would mean that you will choose 2 of the following or choose 3 of the following. So more than 1 answer choice will be required from you. The third type of question would be sentence completion. Basically, you will be given sentences with certain words deleted, and you will select words from a list that is given. We have number entry as another type of question. This is where you will have the question provided. You will be required to do some calculation or some analysis, and you will then key in a numerical answer into the space provided. We also have what we call hotspot type question. Now, hotspot type question is where you will be given, for example, a graph or a diagram, and you will then identify certain region or certain spots that is required of you on the graph. So as you can see, the objective test is not just multiple choice questions, but a variety of question types. Your exam will be marked by the computer. So at each level, you will have to complete all 3 subjects in any order. So you can take E1, P1, F1, or you can take P1, F1, E1, so on and so forth. The exams, the tests, are on demand at Pearson VUE centers. Location of Pearson VUE test centers can be found on the CIMA website. You need to finish all 3 subjects from each level before you move on to do your case study, before you clear 1 level of our syllabus, before you move on to the next. Your tests, as I mentioned earlier, are computer marked, and you will actually get your test results shortly after the assessment has been completed. So once you have completed your exam in the room, when you walk out of your exam room, you should be able to get your results, whether you have passed or failed your objective test. Now, together with your results, you will also receive feedback on your test performance. Your feedback for your test performance will come in the form of your learning objectives, how well you have done in each of the learning objectives. You should then be able to use that as feedback for future improvement. So, for example, if you have passed your objective test for P1, for example, but one of your learning outcomes you did not do as well as you should have, then you could actually go back and brush up your knowledge on that learning outcome in order to support your operational case study exam. Likewise, if you have taken, let's say, the F1 objective test, and for some reason you have failed the test, again, the feedback that comes with your results, you should be able to then look at your performance for each learning outcome, go home, brush up on what seems to be lacking in terms of your knowledge, and in a week or 2 weeks' time, it's up to you, you can then re-enter and sit for the exam. So that's what we mean by test being on demand, and that is you will be able to register and sit for an objective test anytime during the year. Now, at each level, after you have completed the 3 subjects in any order, you will then need to sit for the integrated case study exam. This integrated case study will require you to combine the knowledge as well as your learning across the 3 pillars, the E, P, and F pillar at every level. The case studies are 3 hours long. It is computer-based, meaning that you will be typing your answer into a computer, and your case study will actually simulate a work day. So you will receive information during your exam, you will be given a task to complete, you will be given a deadline which comes in the form of a time limit, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, for example, to complete the task. As far as the case study is concerned, there is no specific or very minimal calculation that is required. For integrated case study, your answer scripts are marked by the examiners, and you should expect your results within 4 weeks. For the objective test, it is on demand and you can sit anytime throughout 365 days in a year. For the integrated case study, we have 4 examining windows per year, namely in February, May, August, and November. Within each window for assessment, there will be 5 days that you will be able to sit for your case study. We start on the Tuesday for the week up to Saturday for that week. Now, if we look at Bloom's taxonomy, the objective test will focus on levels 1, 2, and 3. However, please take note that you may also be tested on levels 4 and 5 at the higher level in your syllabus structure, namely at the management and strategic level. The focus of the case study exam will be on levels 3, 4, and 5. All right? Now that you have a background of the 2015 syllabus, how do students move from the current 2010 syllabus to the 2015 syllabus? I'm now going to move on to talk about the transition. Now, papers that you have passed, exemptions that you have earned by the end of 2014 will carry over to the 2015 syllabus. So what this means is that if, for example, you have passed F2 under the 2010 syllabus, you will not be required to take F2 in the 2015 syllabus. When we talk about levels, levels completed under the current syllabus, students will then move on to the next level in the 2015 syllabus, which means that if you have completed, for example, E1, P1 and F1 by the end of this year, you are deemed to have completed the operational level, and you will move to the next level, which is the management level in 2015. Let's have a look at a few scenarios under these different levels. Let's start with your operational level transition. Okay, so what I have here right at the bottom is how the operational level looks like currently, where you have E1, P1, F1, and currently with the 2010 syllabus, if you have passed this, you will then go on to do E2, P2, F2, so on and so forth. What I have up here is the 2015 syllabus, whereby this is your operational level with your 3 subjects and your operational case study, followed by management level with the 3 management level subjects and the case study, and of course above this is the strategic level. Now, if a student has completed all 3 papers under the 2010 syllabus, which means that if a student has completed all 3 papers by the end of this year, you will move straight to the management level in 2015, meaning that you will bypass the operational case study exam. So once you have completed this by the end of this year, in 2015, you will then go on to do E2, P2, F2. If you have passed one paper, let's say you have passed F1, you will then not need to do F1 for the 2015 syllabus. You will then proceed to do P1, E1 in 2015, followed by the operational case study. If you have completed 2 papers by the end of this year, whether you have passed or you are exempted from the paper, once again, you will not need to do these 2 corresponding papers in the 2015 syllabus, which means that you will then just need to complete the outstanding last paper for operational level and move on to do the operational case study exam. Now, only for operational level, only in 2015, if a student has passed 2 papers at the operational level, it has to be a pass. In other words, exemptions do not count. If a student has passed 2 papers at the operational level by the end of this year, you will have a choice of earning a waiver from your 3rd paper and go straight on to do the operational case study. Right? Caution here, operational case study will require you to understand the learning outcomes from all 3 subjects, E1, P1, F1, which means that only if you are very confident that you have a reasonably good understanding of the learning outcomes from the incomplete subject, for example here, E1, then you should consider taking up this waiver. But if you are not entirely confident, then it would be best for you to not take up this waiver, to sit for the E1 paper before sitting for the operational case study exam. Okay? So a similar transition works with the management level. If you have completed all 3 subjects by the end of this year, you will then bypass the management case study and go straight on to do the strategic level in 2015, E3, P3, F3, followed by the strategic case study exam. So similarly, if you have completed 1 or 2 of the management level papers by the end of this year, you will then go on to take the incomplete papers in 2015, followed by the management case study exam. For the strategic level, if you have completed E3, P3 and not F3, your transition would be to go on to do F3 in 2015 and to sit for the strategic case study exam. If you have completed E3, P3 and F3 by the end of this year, you will still need to go on to do the strategic case study exam in 2015. So there is no exemption of any sort, there is no bypass of any sort for strategic level. So even students who have completed these 3 papers by the end of this year will then go on to do the strategic case study exam. Students who have not gotten through the T4B by the end of this year will then go on to do the strategic case study exam under the 2015 syllabus. So I hope that that gives you a better understanding of how you are able to move from the 2010 syllabus into the 2015 syllabus. So ultimately, when you study and you pass the CIMA exams, you are demonstrating that you have the necessary skills and competencies that employers are actually looking for. One important point to note here, the way in which the 2015 syllabus is assessed is different to the assessment under the current 2010 syllabus. What I'm trying to say here is the 2015 exams are different. The 2015 exams measure different things. And therefore, it is for this very reason that the pass marks are not comparable between the current syllabus and the 2015 syllabus. So let's talk about the pass mark in 2015. The pass mark for objective tests is 70% and 60% for case studies. Now, the pass mark here reflects the needs of employers that have been identified through a consultative process. So when the pass mark was designed, it sends a very strong message to employers out there about the competency of our CIMA candidates. And this is why I said earlier that when our CIMA students pass the exams, we are basically demonstrating that we have the competencies that the industry and the employers are looking for. Now, let's consider the 70% pass mark for the objective test. An obvious question from students would be, is the exam now more difficult? This is the answer. No. The revised pass mark is not at all an indication of the difficulty of the exam. please understand that the pass mark has to change to reflect the change in the assessment methodology, because how the exam looks like in 2015 is not the same as how it is currently. While the current syllabus requires students to write out paragraph after paragraph of answers, in 2015, students are taking an objective test. So if you look at this, it is an entirely different ball game altogether in 2015. There is a change in the way the game is played. So obviously, when you are playing a different game, there needs to be a change in the way that scoring takes place. Yeah? Now, let's look at it in this way. It's an alternative way of looking at it. If, for example, we have students scoring 50% for an objective test, what this means is that the student is only competent with half of the subject content. Putting it into a wider perspective, if a student is only 50% competent for this subject, 50% competent for this subject, and 50% competent for a third subject, you will not have sufficient knowledge to write the case study exam and to successfully pass the case study exam. So what I'm trying to say here is that the 70% pass mark for an objective test, because it is a different assessment methodology, you are talking about objective testing, the 70% pass mark is achievable, number one. And number two, this 70% pass mark will also ensure that students are sufficiently prepared with the necessary foundation to sit for the case study exam and pass. Now let's look at why 70%, and we're going to look at it from the point of the objective test questions. Yeah? Let's compare 2010 syllabus against the 2015 syllabus. Let's say that the expected level of competency for a CIMA student reasonably is 70%. So when you actually get through an exam paper, we expect a student to be 70% competent of the learning outcomes in the subject. And that's a very fair expectation. Okay? So you are 70% proficient when you finish that particular paper. And this will not change from the 2010 to the 2015 syllabus. Now let's start off with your 2010 syllabus. When you are looking at a written exam, there is no way that an examiner can cover 100% of the learning outcome. So let's say, reasonably, if an examiner were to write a good paper, he should be able to cover 70% of the learning outcome under the 2010 syllabus. Alright, so here, statistically, if we expect students to have a level of competency of 70%, in an exam that covers 70% of the learning outcomes, the expected value from these two independent events will be 49%. And therefore, we say, okay, let's have a pass mark of 50%. And that is what we have in the current 2010 syllabus. Now we move on to what we would be expecting in 2015 syllabus. Level of competency, we maintain at 70%. But what happens now is that because we are looking at an objective test, the coverage of learning outcomes in an objective test paper is 100% because an examiner is able to write an objective test paper to cover 100% of the learning outcome from a particular subject, which means that if we want you to be 70% competent from 100% coverage from the exam, the pass mark is 70%. Therefore, a 70% pass mark covering 100% of learning outcomes reflects the same level of competence, the same level of proficiency as 50% pass mark for an exam that cannot have 100% of learning outcome. So this is exactly what I was trying to say, that the assessment is now different in 2015. We are now looking at an entirely different game, and because it's an entirely different game, the scoring is also different. But we are expecting the same level of competence and proficiency from the students. We have practice tests that is available on our cimaglobal.com website. If you click in there under students, exam preparation. Now the purpose of the practice test here is to ensure that students are familiar with the platform, the technology, because we are moving into computer-based assessment. We need students to be familiar with the platform and the technology is being used. It shows how the variety of question styles that I mentioned a bit earlier, now how these different styles may be applied in each subject, each objective test paper. It demonstrates to students the range of complexity, all right, in what we would call a balanced test that you would sit for in 2015. And of course, from the point of view of your tutors, they are able to view the practice test in order to give them an idea and guidance on how to develop their study materials as well as their study program. So the next half an hour of this session will be used to show you the Pearson VUE test. Justin, I will now show you how the practice test platform looks like, and this practice test platform is reflective of how your objective test platform will look like in 2015. So on the screen that we have here, once you have entered into the test, you will have your clock ticking away on the top right-hand corner. So it tells you how much time you have remaining to complete the exam. Obviously, I started this a bit earlier, and it is now clicking down. I've got about 72 minutes left out of my 90 minutes. The other thing that you have up here is your total number of questions, which are 60, and which question you are doing in your test. So 1 of 60. We have another option here that says flag for review, and I will show you how we use flag for review in a very short while. This tells us that I am doing the F1 practice test paper. I have a tab here that says tables and formula. So if I click on table and formula, it takes me to the different tables as well as formula that I may need for calculation questions. So let's begin. Which of the following is not a form of short-term investment? Now this is your typical multiple choice test type question. So here you will need to just pick one answer. Instead of seeing A, B, C, D, what we have here are little bubbles for you to click on. So you need to pick one answer. Now, I am not doing the F1 paper for real. I am not sitting for the F1 test now, so I'm not aiming to put in the correct answer. Alright, so this is just a demonstration of the platform. So let's say I think it's factoring of trade receivables, and if I'm happy with that, I click next to move on. This is another type of question that you will have where you will need to do some calculation, and from the calculation you will have answers as well as determining whether it is profit or loss. Now, if this is going to take up some of my time and I feel that I want to come back to this a bit later, I can choose to flag this. So when I click on flag for review, later I can come back and have a look at this question when I have the time to do the necessary calculation. And I click. This is another type of question that we have. Now, you do not have here any options for answers, but you are supposed to now key in an answer to the empty space that is provided. This question asks you to give your answer to the nearest whole number. So it needs a numerical answer. So if I decide to spell out my answer, let's say I want to write 2,000 and I want to spell out 2 and I type T, it doesn't allow me to do so. So I need to type the number 2. If I want to write 2,000, sometimes we put a space to indicate 2,000. It doesn't allow me to do so. Sometimes we use a comma to indicate 1,000. Again, it doesn't allow me to do so. It only accepts a numerical answer. So I will need to type in 2,000 in this form. And if I'm happy with that, I move on. We have dragging of words into the boxes above. So I can pull the answer and place it in this box. What you will notice here is how when I pull advisors up to this box, this option still remains here, which means that I am able to use it again and again if I want to. I can change my answer by bringing the alternative word and replacing it in the box until I am perfectly happy with the answer. And I move on. Now this question gives you a trial balance. You are supposed to put the correct values in here. Apart from your tables and formula, you now have an additional tab that says Exhibit. So if I click into Exhibit, I will have my trial balance from 31st December 20X1 with all the information here that is important and necessary for my calculation. So I am able to pull an answer and put it into the box. Alright, and I can move on. Alright, so let's say I don't finish this question, okay, because I want to show you something at the end, and I move on. Okay, I have another question here that requires me to give you the answer in numerical again, and let's say I've keyed it in. Again, I'm supposed to key in my number of days. So moving on to the next question. You are required to do some calculation here. Now I'm going to just move on first and come back to this in a very short while. Again, another calculation. I feel that I might not want to spend too much time on this. I want to get through questions that are a little bit more straightforward. I will flag this. Alright, so I'll come back to this. Okay, this is another type of question that you will get in your objective test. Instead of just choosing one, you are asked to choose 3 of the following. So here, you will be able to click, 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 and if I accidentally click a 4th answer, it will not allow me to do so. So I have reached the maximum number of selections. So I say OK. In order for me to be able to click my 3rd answer, I will need to unclick one and click the next. So once I have 3 and I'm perfectly happy with my 3 answers, I move on. Okay, let's just carry on first. Again, I have a calculation question here. I say I'll save it for later. I flag it and I move on. Now, this is another type of question that you would expect to get from the objective test, and that is a combination of a drop box and a box for you to fill in your answer. So what you will do is you will read this and you will then select whether it is a charge or an allowance. I'm going to say, look, I've not actually read it, but I think it's a charge. And, you know, after looking at the numbers, I will then say, okay, I think, you know, after I've done my calculation, that is the correct answer. So once I have completed both boxes, I move on. This is where you are able to put a mark on the question paper itself or on the screen itself in this case. There are 2 errors. Click on the numerical cells in which there is an error. So you are supposed to click twice. So when you go to a cell and you left click, you will leave a mark. And if you left click again, you will leave another mark. It says 2, I click 3 and it doesn't allow me to because I've reached my maximum. I tell them, okay, let me remove that, and I think this is incorrect. So once I have done that and I'm happy with that, I move on. Now this is another type of question that you may get, and that is putting these items into chronological order. Again, this is for you to drag from your answer choices into your cells here. So what I'll do now is I will say, okay, first, you know, they'll probably establish an advisory committee, and look what has happened here. When I drag this to put it into my answer box, it disappears, which means that I can only use this answer option once. So once they have established, I think they will probably develop, and once they have developed, they will produce, once they produce a draft, there would be some form of amendment, and once that is done, there will be a publication. So once I'm happy with my stages here, I move on. Okay, so this again is a multiple choice. Let's just click and we say next. And again, you have a combination of, dragging the answer into the answer cell. And again, you can only use this once. And in this case, selecting whether this is a debit or this is a credit. Can you see that? Okay, so once you are happy with this answer, Let's move on. And if you have completed your whole exam, all 60 questions, you will get to what we call a review screen. Now, with your review screen, what you are able to do now is to then look at how many questions you have not completed and how many questions you have flagged. So when you have done the first round of your test paper, you have the option of reviewing all the questions from the beginning, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, right until 60. You have the option of reviewing only your incomplete questions, which are the ones here. And you have the option of reviewing your flagged questions, which are the flagged ones here. So it's up to you how you want to now go about with your second round of your exam paper, going through it. Let's say I want to review my incomplete questions. So it straight away takes me to the first question I have not completed, not question 1, because question 1 we have answered. We start with the first incomplete, which is question 2. So I come back to this. Remember, we did not do this because, we wanted time to calculate, and that was why I flagged it. Yeah? So let's say I've worked this out, and from my working, I say, all right, yeah, it's 39.98, and I guess it's a loss. Now, when I click next, from question 2, it moves on to question 11. And it says, which of the following is not a form of short-term finance? So again, I'm just going to choose the top answer, and I'm going to click next. Right, so you're going to do some calculation here, and you're going to key this in. I'm going to go next. So I'm basically completing all my incomplete answers from my earlier round. Okay. I'm going to click again. So what has happened here is I have completed all my incomplete questions. If I have flagged a question earlier and I've completed it, I can unflag it. And I can go back to my review screen and look at all my questions again. Alright, I go back to 22, I unflag it. Now let's say I leave this incomplete. So now what happens here is that I've got an incomplete question out of the 60 questions, and I think I'm done. So I say end exam at this bottom left corner. When I click end exam, the system will tell me that I have one incomplete question. And I go, oh, okay. No, I don't want to end it yet, because now I know I have got one question incomplete. So I go back to that incomplete question, I work it out, and I key in my answer, and I go back to my review screen, and I say, I better go through this and check to ensure that I've done everything. And I've done everything. Okay? I have forgotten to unflag this. So let's see what happens here when I say end exam. It is okay. If I have not unflagged this, I can end this exam. And it tells me that if I end my exam now, I will not be able to come back and review. Do you want to end it? I say yes. It asks me for a double confirmation. Are you sure you want to end this? And I say yes. And I have completed my F1 test. So once I have completed my test and I walk out of the test center to the counter, I should expect my results. And my results, well, it will not come with a score, but my actual results will come with either a pass or a fail. So I will get a pass or fail, and together with that, you will have your learning outcomes as well as how you would perform or how you have performed for each learning outcome. You will not get a numerical percentage in your actual feedback. It will probably tell you that you have done well, you have done moderately well, you have failed, you have marginally failed. So from that, you are able to gauge where you need to put a little bit more effort in. So in my case, I can see that, well, I've done reasonably well for regulatory environment, but I have to put in a lot more work for financial accounting, management of working capital, as well as fundamentals of business tax. So I will use this feedback to improve my knowledge, in order to either resit this test if I have not gotten through, or to firm up my knowledge to sit for the case study. So this is how the objective test looks like. So I will now show you the platform for the case study practice exam. We're going to use the management case study practice exam as an example. So at the very start of your case study exam, it will tell you exactly how many sections you will have and how much time you will have for each section. So you can tell that you will be having 45 minutes, 40 minutes, 35 minutes, and 60 minutes for each of these sections respectively. One of the things that you need to be very clear about is that for each section that we have here, this is the maximum amount of time that you can spend on section 1, 45 minutes, which means that at the 45-minute mark, the computer, the system, will automatically push you into the next section. It does not allow you to take longer than 45 minutes to write your answers for section 1. You have a choice of ending your exam or ending your answer for section 1 earlier than 45 minutes, which means that if you have written out your answer, if you have typed out your answer within 30 minutes and you are happy with it and you want to move on, you are able to. You move on to section 2 after 30 minutes. But whatever time that you have saved here, the 15 minutes that you have saved here will not be carried forward into the next section. So that is something to keep in mind when you are doing your case study. What you will get in your case study platform once you click in, number 1, you will have your timing here on the top right-hand corner again. And if we recall, the first section has 45 minutes and my clock is already ticking away at 44 minutes, 38 seconds. I have here a tab that brings me to my pre-scene that was given to me before I sat for the case study. I can also view my structure again to see how much time I have for each section. Okay, so I can click through this. I can close that. I have an option to click on tables. And I will now read this trigger, this newspaper headlining with news about an increase in aviation fuel price. So once I've looked at it, I will click next. And I have a finance director asking me to write an email. So in this email, he wants me, all right, Michael here, wants me to join a working party to establish, potential ways of reducing costs and increasing revenue. He's concerned with what is happening and he wants us to suggest ways to improve. Before the first meeting, now he wants you to prepare a report. So this is your task for your first section. You are supposed to, number 1, include a strategic analysis. Number 2, include an evaluation of waste. So these two here are the tasks that you will have to complete for the first section. Looking up on top, you have your tab for tables, you have your tab for pre-seen. When you click on reference material, this was the newspaper article that we saw just a minute ago. So you have all of this on your screen. So once I have identified and understood my task, I click next and it brings me to my answer screen. And what happens now is when I click on reference material, I get the newspaper article as well as the email that was sent to me by the finance director. Okay, so I can come back here and look at what he wants me to do. I can close this and I will type my answer. So when I type my answer here. When you look at the options that we have, as far as this is concerned, we have very minimum word processing options. You have cut, copy, paste, undo, bold, italic, underline. That is all. You have undo and redo. Now the reason for this is because the test is not about your word processing skills. It is about the quality of your answer. So there is no need for a lot of options to show off any word processing skills in your answer. It is minimal to ensure that you are able to very quickly cut, copy, paste your answer. If you want to create headings and subheadings, you are able to do so with your bold and your italics, for example. So once you have done that, you will type your answer out. Okay, and I find that I want to bring this up. I can cut, paste, and adjust. So this is how you will be writing out your answer in terms of the task that is given. So you would probably start off your report and you will have your first section, which is on strategic analysis, right? So you will write something on strategic analysis and you'll probably do something on evaluation. And this is how you will type your report to your finance director. Now, once you have done this, you will be able to click next. That brings you to the next section. You have time left. My advice is fully utilize the 45 minutes that you have. If, for example, you have written for 44 minutes, 50 seconds, and the time now runs down the last 10 seconds and your 45 minutes is up, you will get a pop-up here that tells you that your time is up. It stops you from continuing this question. It forces you into the next section of the exam. Okay, you are not able to come back to this question to make any more adjustment to your answer. So it is very important that you follow closely to your time allocation. So once I've done this, and if I'm happy with my answer, I will then click next. Because I am leaving earlier than my 45 minutes, the exam will ask me if I am wanting to continue with this action, because I will not be able to return once I have moved on. So if I say yes, it will ask me again, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure because I am done. And it takes me to my next section. Now, my next section here will run for 40 minutes. And as you can see, my clock is already ticking. And this now says 1 week later. So after the report that you have written and provided to your finance director in section 1, 1 week later, the working party has an initial finding. And you are given further information in section 2. Once you have read and understood this, you will move on and you get your task again. Michael Gibbons, Finance Director, has now written to you another email and he wants you to prepare a report to demonstrate clearly that change management issues associated with introducing TQM to Flyjet. Okay? And he has got concerns about this move. He needs you to evaluate the marketing implications. So once you have understood this question, you will then move on to your answer screen. And again, you will be able to type out your answers to section 2. Coming to your reference material, you have got your email here from the finance director. Your task will be here. You have got the earlier executive summary that is provided before the email, and you've got this here. Okay, so this is how the case study platform looks like, and this will go on until you have completed all the sections for the case study, which will constitute a total of 3 hours in terms of duration. Is the platform for your practice test for both the objective testing as well as the case study. I strongly encourage you to go in, have a look, have a try, play around with the practice test, because you can do that practice test again and again with the same questions though, but again and again, just to get yourself familiarized with the platform, because familiarity with the technology and the platform is important to ensure that you are able to progress smoothly during your exam. If you have any inquiries, please do write us an email to seasia@cimaglobal.com. I hope that you have benefited from this session. I hope that the 2015 syllabus as well as the 2015 assessment is much clearer to you. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best in your studies and your future undertakings. Thank you.